Waiting for some more people to join. I'll just kick off. Hi, everyone. You're very welcome. My name is Kaz, and I'm a member of the CIPR committee here in Northern Ireland. Our chair, Paula McNulty, is unfortunately unable to join the session now today, so she sends her apologies. But thanks anyway for joining this webinar on PR measurement and evaluation. I think we all know that proving PR value has never really been more important than it is now. So I'm really hopeful that we can all take away some practical tips from today's session. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Steph Bridgman. Steph is an AMIC board member and she's one of the industry's leading experts in media insight and evaluation. And Steph has over 25 years of experience in this sector. So I think we're all in very good hands today. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we start. Please do submit some of your questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. So don't use the chat tab, use the Q&A tab. We will try and answer, I think, a few of these, Steph, at the end. If there are loads we don't have time to get through, we'll kind of go through them, the most popular ones, and maybe look to kind of send in some answers post-session. There's also going to be a full recording of today's session as well, so you'll be able to access back and kind of review things if you're kind of planning your own evaluation templates going forwards. And just one final thing to flag before I hand over to Steph. The next CIPR webinar will be on the 18th of May from 12 until 1 p.m. and it'll be on AI in PR and it'll be with Andrew Bruce Smith and Ben Verinder. So if you keep an eye on the CIPR socials, there'll be more information there and how to book tickets and so on. So we'd love to see everybody back again if you're able to join us. And that's it for me. So over to you, Steph.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that the people that are following me at the next session are two people who I'm a complete fangirl of. You've got Andrew Bruce Smith and Ben Verinder as well. So that's going to be a really good session. Actually, on the 18th of May, I will be in Dublin because AMEC is hosting a summit in Dublin between the 18th and the 20th of May. So looking forward to hopping over the water. Last time I was over there in Ireland, I was about 18 years old, so I think the place would have changed an awful lot. And I love both parts of Ireland. I had some really fond memories of times as a youth in Donegal and the Giant's Causeway and Antrim and so on. Anyhow, let me share my screen first of all. Thank you. Hopefully you can see that. I can't see you, so I'm just going to crack on and just hop in, Kaz, if there's any technical issues and people can't see my screen. Okay, good. Thank you. So firstly, I just want to thank you for having me. I think I had the opportunity to come and speak to you because I am an AMEC board member. So a question went out in the AMEC board member WhatsApp group asking if anybody can speak to you colleagues today at the CIPR. And I actually I'm a former committee member of the CIPR in the Northwest region. I've done a number of in-person talks with them. And the session that I'm going to talk to you about today, I actually presented to the CIPR not-for-profit group last summer. It went down relatively well. So yeah, I guess it's through my AMEC credentials that I got the opportunity to speak to you today. If you want to connect with me, there's a QR code there on the call. That would be one of my positive outcomes from today's session, is to have some new connections on LinkedIn. So do feel free to connect to me if you want to keep in touch and continue to be part of the conversation about measurement. I've been an AMEC board member since 2021, but I've been involved in the measurement industry since I left university, actually, in the late 90s. One of the areas that I really focus on the AMEC side, it's a voluntary role, as we all have voluntary roles with our trade associations, is the education front. And I love to spread my passion for measurement. And I was really fortunate to have had the opportunity to co-create two of AMEC's courses, AMEC's foundation course in measurement and evaluation, and its integrated evaluation framework tutorial. So I've just put some clips up there just to let you know a little bit about it. They are free courses if you're an AMEC member, but they're really keenly priced, even to non-members as well. So I just wanted to let you know a little bit more about those. A little bit more also about me and my company. We are at Amex Small Consultancy of the Year in 2023, and we've been highly commended in that as well. I'm really proud to have been an assessor with Socially Mobile since they started again in 2021. And I think it was through the work that I do for the PR community, both on the Amex side and the Socially Mobile side, that enabled me to be named on the Independent Impact 50 Winners list last year, which celebrates impactful work by independent practitioners in the PR community. I help a lot of organisations to write AMEC awards and to win them. So I've got some of my credentials there in terms of AMEC award wins, not for me, but as a ghostwriter for many brands, including many in your region as well. I've written some awards for some media intelligence organisations based over there too. And what we're going to do today is I want to share with you effectively my free or affordable measurement tips. I want to talk to you a little bit about best practice. I want to share with you some of the tools and the techniques that I use, and I want to share with you also some people to follow for further inspiration. And funnily enough, that final slide used to have Andrew Bruce Smith on it, and I've swapped him out for somebody else. But if you want to continue to know more about Andrew Bruce Smith, of course, there's the next session coming up on the 18th of May. And the reason why I like to share my free and affordable measurement tips is because as an independent practitioner in the media intelligence world, I'm not tied to any big tool or big company. I really am independent. And when I do work with media intelligence organizations, they are often coming to me to actually produce outputs for their clientele, but at a real keen price. And so I've over the years developed some affordable, free, often techniques to get some really meaningful data points together. I wanted to share them with you as well. Right, we're going to spend a few minutes here just briefly talking a little bit about best practice. AMEC, if you haven't already heard of it, is the International Association for the Measurement and Evaluation of Communication. And one of the key things it is known for is something called the Integrated Evaluation Framework. And I've got a screenshot of the Integrated Evaluation Framework here on the screen. It's a free resource. You can fill it in online. You can watch lots of content about the integrated framework on Amex YouTube channel. You can speak to me about other organizations who have used the framework to lay out their thinking really about good communications practice, not just at the measurement stage, but actually at the beginning, at this objective setting stage as well. So it really is a kind of way of thinking. I'm not going to spend too much time today talking about this because I could literally spend a whole hour talking about the framework, but I want you to make you aware of it. And I want you to perhaps reflect on some of the reporting or measurement that you may be doing for your own clients or organization. And ask yourself, are you actually talking and reporting mainly actually on the activities that you've been producing, perhaps to justify your retainer or your project fee or to justify your role? Is your reporting heavy on that activities front? Or are you actually perhaps focusing quite a lot on the outputs, the articles and so on that are coming as a result of the communications activities that you've been doing? And I want you to begin to think about, well, how can we take this conversation further? How can we explore actually what happened next as a result of the communications activities? And that's one of the key things about the integrated evaluation framework, because it takes that thinking to that next stage. What happened next? That's the outcomes piece, and actually the organizational impact. What happens next just from a comms point of view, but actually did that ladder up to anything commercially perhaps, or from a behavior change point of view for the organization that we're working for? The middle part of the AMEC integrated evaluation framework has these three kind of blue metrics or metric buckets: outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. And I like to simplify these three buckets into metrics around what people see, metrics are linked to how people think, and metrics around what people do. So your C metrics could be, literally what people see, the articles, the article counts, the reach figures and so on. But the outtakes are actually how people think. So it could be an exploration perhaps around the sentiment of the media coverage. It could be linked to the strength of the message delivery, because all of those kind of constituent parts of the communications that you're producing help to change how people think about the organisation. But then to also encourage you to look for evidence points around what people did next. It could be that they came to your website. It could be that they came to an event and that there are some metrics that are therefore offline that you need to be thinking about measuring as well. It could be that they search for your brand or a topic or a campaign name. It could be that people engage with your social media posts and so on. And so these are kind of some of the examples of some of the outcome metrics. If we've got any people on the call today here who may work in the public sector or in government, I also wanted to alert you to the fact that the Government Communications Service has an awful lot out there to support and to guide you in terms of good quality evaluation. So it has, in 2024, it republished its evaluation cycle documents. And actually, I also found a really good piece of work from the GCS about how to guide your thinking for a low or no cost communications campaign. And the QR code that you see on the screen there will take you to that documentation around low or no cost communications. I mentioned before one of the AMEC courses that I was involved in co-creating is the AMEC Foundation in Media Measurement and Evaluation course. It's £149 to non-members. Again, there's a QR code if you're interested in finding out more about that. Thousands of people have taken this course. It's one of the achievements I think I'm most proud of professionally is the extent to which I've been able to be part of the onboarding for so many people who work both in the media intelligence profession, because a lot of AMEC members will take this course, their new starters, their new hires, even their salespeople will take this course. But this is a really great course also for perhaps new starters, account execs and juniors that may be joining the organisation that you work for. And it's about introducing you to some of that terminology and methodologies used in media measurement and evaluation. I want to also let you know about another free resource on the AMEC website, and it's called the Measurement Maturity Mapper. It's free to use, and you can find it at the URL that you can see there on the screen. And what I love about the Measurement Maturity Mapper is it allows you to think about what you're doing from a measurement point of view in the context of everybody else in the world who may be doing it at a much more advanced level, or perhaps less so. It's a series of questions that it asks you about your organisation and your agency's approach to measurement, how likely you are, for example, to perhaps act on or change course based on what that measurement or data may show you. It's a really brilliant tool because not only does it ask you a series of questions, but at the end of those questions, it shows you this beautiful visualization of how you are doing in terms of your own organization's measurement approach against the benchmark of everybody else that has filled out that form in the past. And what it also does, it gives you some practical examples as to what you may need to do differently within your organization to really kind of nudge up that maturity of measurement within your organization. So I wanted to let you know about the Measurement Maturity Mapper because, again, it's another brilliant tool for understanding how your measurement fits in the context of how everybody else is measuring globally, because AMEC is a global trade association. And then I want you to sort of think and reflect really about the things that the constituent parts of the measurement that you might be doing within your organisation, because I think everything's got a little bit messy of late. When I first joined the profession in the late 90s, everything was a little bit simpler, actually. Our focus was on earned media measurement. So we would We would analyse news articles. We would analyse TV coverage, radio coverage. There was actually a finite volume of content out there in the world. There were only so many column inches to be filled in print publications because it was in the days before the internet, and there were only a certain number of minutes in the day that the broadcasters could fill. So things were simpler back in the day. Now, of course, we have so many different channels. We have social analytics from all of the different social media channels we may be working with. We may be looking at website data, that would be Google Analytics or similar. You may be exploring some market research results, and those market research results might come before the campaign even starts, and then hopefully some market research results might also come at a later stage post campaign, and you can compare the two sets of data against each other. Your data may also include, well, how are people searching for my brand, my topic, my organization, and of course, increasingly in recent years, some of the data points that you may be considering may be around how visible your brand is in terms of AI. And so I've shown a picture of Mr. Messi here because I feel that everything has the potential to be a sort of bit of a tangled knot at the moment. There really isn't one tool available out there to bring all of these things together and knit them into some compelling story, but it requires your ability to pull data from a range of different sources and bring them together, perhaps offline, perhaps using AI to interrogate the various different data feeds that you may be getting from all of these different separate sources, and tell a compelling integrated story so that you're reporting in the round. You're not just reporting actually on the outputs of the campaign that you may have produced, but you're also exploring evidence points around outcomes too. And I suppose the question really is that even from that point of view, if you haven't got a data mindset within your organization or your agency, have you got the right foundations in place to be able to do something meaningful with that data, perhaps even if you are putting it into AI to interrogate the data? So in the next few slides, I wanted to outline some of the approaches that I have towards measurement. And I suppose the series of tips that I'm about to share with you are kind of grouped into three buckets. Firstly, they're about helping you to find or log content in a way that doesn't necessarily require a big subscription to one of the media monitoring organizations, perhaps if budget is not there available to you. I wanted to share with you also how we in the industry go about enriching content and how you may want to approach that within your own organization as well. Again, particularly if you haven't got the budget to put these tasks out to some of the agencies that can do it for you. And I also wanted to share with you some of the websites and the tools that I use to help add the kind of the so what, the context, because I think that's also really key when talking about data. Everybody always asks me when I produce a report for them, well, is this good? What does good look like? And I think context is a real key thing here. In terms of how we get people to engage with the numbers that we may be sharing with them. Okay, some organizations have the luxury, I would call it, of having dedicated media monitoring tools in place. They offer this luxury comes at a fee, often thousands of pounds per month, to be able to sort and organize and find, locate mentions about your brand or organization. But more often than not, particularly even amongst PR agencies, but perhaps amongst solo practitioners, freelancers, charitable organizations, and so on, there isn't even the budget there for media monitoring. And I have to say, in the days that we're seeing now in the age of AI, there's so much that you can do from a media monitoring perspective that could either be DIY, free, or at a low cost. And I suppose the first step everybody always takes, even when they do have media monitoring in place, is to set up a Google Alert to just check that the media monitoring organisations are not missing anything. And that's the trouble, actually. Any media monitoring organisation is never going to find 100% of your content all of the time. But I wanted to make you aware of something within, well, it's within Google Alerts, but actually it's just within Google itself. It's the Google Advanced Search function. So to type into your browser Google Advanced Search, and this allows you to almost set a series of Boolean operators within your search online to be a little bit more specific and targeted in the search that you're looking for. So the advanced search functionality within Google allows you to focus on keywords, allow exclusionary keywords, ask your search to perhaps focus on content in a particular format, in a particular region, within a particular time frame. It can you can set it to focus on particular websites or exclude particular websites. And I just wanted to make you aware of this feature within Google, because some people may set up a very simple Google alert and then find that returns perhaps some irrelevant content. So you can be a lot more targeted by using the advanced search feature. And of course, with this being Google, we are the product, so then the functionality is free. I've been approached recently by a startup in the industry and they're called journalist.net, and they are offering a tool, a media monitoring functionality within their platform at quite a reasonable monthly cost. I'm not getting paid by them, but I wanted to make you aware of the fact that there are an increasing number of startups in the media monitoring industry that are effectively using the power of AI to crawl the internet, surface the results for you. But not even just that, but actually then summarize the results into almost client-ready or executive-ready snapshots. So there are some alternative media monitoring providers out there. Another tool that I frequently talk about, and again is free, and I personally also use it as a backup to paid for media monitoring alerts, is this free tool from a company called Talkwalker. So Talkwalker is a bit like a sort of Meltwater of this world as well. They do media monitoring across all news, across social media and so on. And they've obviously got a paid for service, but they do allow you to set up your free coverage alert. It actually will give you some results in email formats. And if you're working for an organization that doesn't produce a huge volume of content on a day by day or week by week basis, we often find that these kind of more ad hoc approaches to media monitoring do the job. I also want to explain to you that increasingly the clients I'm working with are using AI to replace media monitoring. I show here on the slide a prompt that replaced into AI, effectively just asking it to look for relevant coverage about a potential client. I Googled big organizations in Northern Ireland, and apparently there's a company called Encirc, and they work in the supply chain for the beverage sector. And so the prompt to this particular AI task was to ask it to go and look for 5 key news stories on a daily basis that might be worth sharing with my clients to keep them informed of reputational risks in this industry. And so in the blue section on the screen it shows the prompt that I put into AI, and interestingly, in the sort of lighter blue section on the left-hand side of the screen is the way in which AI turned that into a slightly better prompt, and then it goes off and it does it. And I suppose what I'm trying to say here is you can be the master of your own media monitoring services going forward. If you've got the right questions and the right prompts, and you can tweak that over time, you can get some really interesting data back that helps keep you informed, that helps provide, again, that context around why why the media monitoring results may be useful or actionable for the person that you might be sharing that with. And so I wanted to perhaps encourage you to experiment with AI and see whether it can sometimes do some of the heavy lifting that media monitoring organizations may otherwise have previously done. I also wanted to share with you a couple of tools that I really admire. Coverage Book and Released, you may have heard of them. And again, if you're a smaller organization, not perhaps achieving a huge volume of coverage on a weekly basis, if you've got those free alerts going in the background and you've perhaps got 10 articles a week to assess and make sense of, a tool such as Coverage Book or a tool such as Release can be a really useful way of turning effectively the URLs for those few articles that you may have found from an unstructured form of data into a structured form of data. And what I mean by that is literally by having a URL to start with, you can feed these into those two tools, and it will do some of the heavy lifting for you. It will bring back the headline so that you don't then have to copy and paste it into your document. It will outline what the date is. It will bring into a CSV file the name of the source. It will look to audience metrics. It will gather whether that content was shared socially, which again is a form of outcome or engagement metric. And what I love about both of these tools, actually, I've called it no BS reach metrics. They differ from some of the, let's say, legacy media monitoring tools out there because they give you what I would consider to be a much smaller article level readership metric, which is more reflective of who actually likely saw your piece of news content. One of the struggles I've been having with the media monitoring industry over my whole career actually is about the quality, not the quality, but the believability of their reach data. And the thing is that, of course, media monitoring agencies are there to surface content in a timely way, in a really structured way, in an efficient way. So they need to tell you about the content as soon as it happens. But the audience for that content doesn't happen as soon as it happens sometime afterwards, and it can be affected by things like placement of that content on a homepage or a section page, or it could be affected by extent of social shares and so on. And I've been advocating for so many years that we should not look at this huge site-wide audience metric as an indicator of reach. These big numbers that we often see in media monitoring portals that say, you had a piece in the Daily Mail, so potentially you reached 90 million people. And we know that that isn't actually a true reflection of who likely saw that piece of coverage. And both Released and Coverage Book have got metrics more akin to an article level readership figure. There is this brilliant advertising campaign that Coverage Book did, and I wanted to press play, and I hope that it plays for you today because it's just a funny thing. It's a humorous look at organizations that dwell perhaps a little bit too much on that bigger reach metric. And perhaps at the end, I'll say some reflections on as to why I think that the smaller reach metric is a lot more credible for you within your organization. I'm going to press play now. And Kaz, if you find that once I've pressed play, that the sound is not coming through to you at your end, please just butt in and tell me, and I'll go to the next slide as well. So here we go.
The sound isn't coming across, Steph.
It's not. Okay. I thought it wasn't coming across last time when I had a two screen set up, and I thought it was linked to my speakers on my second screen not coming through. But okay, too bad. Actually, the QR code on the right hand side does take you to that clip on YouTube. It's a really funny clip, but it's about trying to encourage us to not not report on these huge, I reach 5 billion people with my 50 articles of coverage type of approach. I would encourage you, if you haven't already seen it, to go watch that video by Coverage Book because it's brilliant. And the reason why I advocate for a smaller number, more indicative of who likely saw your piece of content, is really about thinking about a seesaw, actually. If you think about a seesaw, if you're fooling yourself and overclaiming who likely saw your piece of press coverage because you're talking about the site-wide audience metric for that piece of press coverage, effectively who goes to that website during a period of a month, you're fooling yourself and you're fooling your superiors you might be reporting to, because we know that not everybody that goes to a website over a course of a month is likely to have seen your one article, particularly if that article was hidden away deep inside a section, particularly if that website produces a lot of content. And so even if it did appear on the homepage, it might have only been there for a day, might not have stayed there for a week or so on. And I like to also, because I encourage organisations to focus on what happened next after the communications and to gather data around the outcome metrics. My point is, I suppose, is if your seesaw and your reach is very heavy because you're talking about site-wide audience metrics rather than article-level audience metrics, your seesaw is going to be really imbalanced. You're going to have a really heavy amount of reach. You might have reached 1 billion people. We know it not to be true. So why do we perpetuate this myth anyhow? And then your outcome metrics might be, well, we sold 5 widgets. And I'm exaggerating for the point I'm making, just to make this point here. In a sense, if one thing's really heavy and the other thing's really light, I think it just points to a slight imbalance in strategy and approach. If you were reporting on article level reach, of course that number is going to be lower. But actually, I think it's more going to be realistic of who likely saw the content that you produced. And then that seesaw and that kind of disconnect between the who likely saw the coverage and then who took action as a result of the coverage is just that little bit more kind of level. And so that's the analogy I like to use and why I'm one of the industry's biggest advocates for these no BS reach metrics. Right. Now, if you've used one of those tools, such as Coverage Book or Released or so on, and you've put your 100 or so URLs into their tool and it's gathered all of this data at scale for you, and it's done some of the heavy lifting because it's almost begun to produce for you the bones of a coding sheet for qualitative media analysis. These are some of the metrics that most organizations tend to then delve deeper into if they really want to get a deeper knowledge of what that content means for them. So broadly, I would say across all of the clients that I've worked with over the past 25 years, it boils down to these kind of 6 or so sets of metrics. So it's nothing more complex than this, really. It's about the sentiment of the media coverage, and that could be at an article level, but it can actually be at an entity level. I remember back in the day, I used to work for an organisation called Metrica before I set up my own business. They were based in London and they were one of the early day leading media intelligence organisations. And they were fortunate. It was the 90s, so it was the early days of mobile phones. They were fortunate to have, I think, all of the mobile phone providers as their clients at the time. And I looked after most of them. So we had your Orange, if you remember Orange, Vodafone, O2, BT Cellnet, I think it was called back in the day, and whatever, T-Mobile, I think it was called before EE, and so on. And there'd be an awful lot of media coverage that would be coming through, for example, in like What Mobile magazine. And it would be like the best mobile for this. And those complex features that compare one product against another, or it might be like a car, going away from mobile phones, actually, even it could be car brands, and you're comparing one thing against each other. Sometimes the sentiment is too broad or too not specific enough on an article level. So sometimes it's necessary to look at sentiment on what we call an entity level. And this is because one article can mention many things, and you may be interested in assessing the sentiment of those many things against each other. So this one feature might have mentioned 5 of the different mobile phone brands, and it might have been neutral for one and positive for another and negative for another. So sentiment, either at an overall level or at what's called an entity level, it is a way of breaking down the coverage and exploring its quality at a greater depth. Messaging, of course, is a key attribute that we will look for as well. It could be messaging that's word for word delivered, and that's a lot easier to do, particularly in an automated fashion with AI, because you're kind of looking for a set of keywords or a phrase, and it's kind of yes, no type of answer. But actually, messaging can also be inferred. So that's why sometimes I advocate for the fact that, particularly if you've got low levels of media coverage, perhaps that might only take a few hours to analyze, is to do messaging analysis at a human level, because language is not as black and white as perhaps AI systems may make them out to be. And I think, to this point about messaging being inferred, it's just something to bear in mind. Prominence, of course, is key. I think there's a stat that 80% of people don't read beyond the headline. And so there could also be a stat to suggest that, well, maybe most media analysis programs should just focus on what's being said in the headline, given that most people then don't read beyond it. But yeah, prominence, are you in the headline? Are you in the first paragraph? Is the image about you? And so on. Are you sharing that piece of content with other peer organizations, competitors, advocates, detractors, all that kind of stuff? And then they will look for the presence of spokespeople. They will sometimes perhaps combine the spokespeople with the messaging to assess whether that spokesperson is good on message or off message. Do you therefore need some updated media training and so on? We would look at some of the topics that are being mentioned in the content and focus on some of the attributes around the imagery used and so on. And so I suppose what I'm saying is that by using a tool such as Coverage Book or Released, it does so much of that heavy lifting for you, because it gives you the structured data with the kind of key quantitative attributes, the date, the source, publication name, and so on. But it allows you, they both of them got a function within them, which is an export to CSV function or export to Excel function. Actually, so do many media monitoring tools themselves. And I would encourage you to get confident with that and then take that CSV, save it as an Excel spreadsheet. That's something important to know, the difference between a CSV file and an Excel spreadsheet. But then add some columns to the right-hand side of that, which could be a sentiment column, it could be a message column, and simply, have some yes/no fields going on there. Once you've got everything in a neat and tidy spreadsheet, you can start doing some really cool analysis. And again, if that's not really your forte, you can start putting these spreadsheets that have been filled into your AI tools and asking them some interesting questions, and it can begin to do some of that charting and analysis for you. Similarly, you may produce a measurement report and get some data points together, but actually you're not quite sure if this is good or not. And as I say, it's the question that I'm most often asked is, what does good look like? And I was happy to support Coverage Book back in, well, it's actually, it was at the beginning of 2025 on this, something called the Benchmarks Report. And it looked at what everybody else had been placing into Coverage Book in the year before. It was based on an analysis of 6 million data points. And of course, these are typically data points that have been placed there by PR people. So they're likely to be data points around proactively generated PR coverage. And it was just fascinating to be able to break it down, perhaps by vertical, perhaps by channel, to assess, well, what does good look like for everybody else? And we found, for example, that 66% of content didn't actually ever get shared on social media at all. So if you're finding that your news articles aren't being shared on social media, that's it's not necessarily a bad thing because you're there along with 66% of others that had placed their content into the Coverage Book system. If you received 20 shares on your news article in the Daily Mail, for example, was that good? Well, actually, we found in this benchmarking analysis that only 19% of content was shared more than 10 times. So it helps to place some of these numbers into context because again, to my point about trying to encourage senior leaders and agencies to report on the smaller number and perhaps take the ego out of their reporting, to be able to understand that, okay, well, 5 shares is good actually, or 10 shares is good. It just helps to put these smaller numbers into context when you're trying to change behaviours there. And then I want to explain to you or draw your attention to this tool here, which I actually just made I made a post about it on LinkedIn a few minutes before I came online today because I wanted to check that the tool was still there. It was created by a PR agency called Bottle. Again, all of these organisations I don't have any affiliation with. They're just ones that I like to support and promote because I think they're doing great things for the industry and often offering these cool tools for free to you. And I put into Bottle earlier today the number 750 and found out that there are more than 750 airports in Argentina, which I thought was fascinating. But this tool from Bottle, it's obviously using AI to power it, and it allows you to put in your big reach figure. So here I've put 15 million here, and it allows you to put it into context to perhaps humanize the number a little bit, because 15 million sounds great, but actually, let's try and picture this in our head. So you put in your number and you press how many people is that, and it gives you a really interesting stat that humanizes it. And if you don't like the stat, that's the stat that it comes back with. You can click on give me another stat and it will give you another stat. So 15 million people is roughly how many diesel cars there are on the roads in the UK, but it's also roughly how many people visit cafes during the week. Again, it's just a way perhaps of putting your metrics and you're often reporting those metrics to people who perhaps are not in a communications function into just a slightly more understandable format. And then I also want to talk to you about Google Trends because it's a tool that I use frequently in my evaluation reports. I've got a screenshot here. It's actually from years ago. It's from it's pre-pandemic 2019. Back in the day, I was a governor at a further education college here in the northwest of England called Accrington and Rosendale College. We ended up merging with another college you see here on the screen, a Nelson and Colne College. I was mindful that Accrington and Rosendale College at the time had cut its marketing expenditure and that was having an impact on its recruitment. And actually, in an education sector, marketing leads to recruitment, and recruitment leads to bums on seats, and bums on seats leads to funding, and it's sort of a circular thing. And it was a really interesting case study in terms of how to demonstrate that a reduction in funding in your marketing can have a downstream impact some years later on your bottom line. And I wanted to do a media analysis report for them. I obviously couldn't sell them one because that would be unethical, but I did use just a simple screenshot from Google Trends where I put their name in and I put the name of some of their competing colleges in the local area and demonstrated by filtering for the UK in past 12 months that their particular college didn't have nearly the same volume of search and therefore interest or perhaps consideration by either their current students or perhaps future students as their competing colleges in the local area. And this was really an interesting kind of proof point that I could demonstrate to them in the absence of any funding for any market research to also demonstrate the same. The thing I love about Google Trends is it allows you to go back and look over time back to 2004. So we've got more than 20 years worth of historic data there. You can filter the information by country and you can compare search term organization for a phrase, for a topic, and you can compare it up to 5 terms against each other. Something to bear in mind, of course, is that what you see on the chart here is not volume of search. They do what's called normalize the volume of search so that the scale that you see on the left-hand side is a 100-point scale, where the point at which it reaches 100, here on the right-hand side of the screen, where that red line reaches that 100-point, shows that that particular organisation had the highest volume of search within that given time frame over the course of that year. So I was able to just, with a screenshot, demonstrate that Burnley College, Nelson and Con College were getting more search, given that they're from the same target area with the same kind of student cohort size. That shouldn't have been the case. So Google Trends can be really interesting. And I suppose the point I'm making around Google Trends is the fact that when we've been reached by a message or we're seeking out further information, one of the first things that we do is we go to Google. And so Google Trends is a really useful data source for us to demonstrate, I would say, awareness and potential consideration, because people often then will obviously look into Google when they're perhaps in the market for purchasing or making a more informed decision. Here's another free tool that you might be interested in using. It's called Answer the Public. It gives you, I think, 3 free goes every day. I'm lucky I've got a paid-for subscription. And actually with my paid-for subscription, it allows me to do some really cool things like check how search has changed between one period and another period. But Answer the Public is great because it is similar to Google Trends. It looks at search behaviors. But it used to just look at Google, actually, and now it includes so many other things as well, because it looks at how people are searching, not just on Google, but on Bing, on YouTube, TikTok, and so on. And it's about the phrasing of that search. And you can put in a source search here, and it will come back to you with all the very similar types of searches that people are putting into those different platforms to look for that particular topic, brand, a seed term that you might have placed in there. You're able to filter by language and geography as well. And I think it's really useful, actually. It's useful for measurement, but it's actually also useful for PR planning itself. Because my point is, I suppose, is that if you can produce content that matches how people search, then your content is potentially more likely to be surfaced because it matches how people are searching. In a sense, are you using the same kind of language that your target audience is using? And some of that language and terminology used can be surfaced through an analysis of how people search online. So this is a great tool. I love Answer the Public. And then similarly, Google Autocomplete. I took this screenshot last week, actually. So I put in Trump and it gives me an indication of how people were searching around that particular term last week. So it was an interesting week for news and Trump outrage. It was the week that Jesus image was going around and things to do. Trump and the Pope were having spats with each other, I think, on social media. I wanted to let you know about a book that I really love, which is called Everybody Lies. And it taught me an awful lot about how these Google autocomplete suggestions that we see, and we're all familiar with, when we start typing a search term into Google, it comes up with some of the most trending searches for that particular term linked to what you've placed into the Google search bar. But it's fascinating. The book in itself, it explains how the sentiment of the responses that come up in the Google autocomplete suggestion can change behaviours. It's fascinating how it's used in political spheres, for example. And there's actually a lot of information in there about, I think, at the time of the Clinton Trump election back in 2016, that it uses as some of its reference data. But I also wanted to alert you to the fact that you can take a screenshot of a Google autocomplete suggestion before you've done a piece of comms activity. And it may be that because no one knew about it and no one's searching about it, you don't find evidence of, say, your campaign name or your new product or your new CEO or whatever in those Google autocomplete suggestions. And I would urge you sometimes, if you don't find evidence of the thing that you're wanting to promote in these Google autocomplete suggestions, that you take a screenshot of that before the activity commences, let's say. And I've used this trick. I've used this trick with a big pharmaceutical company that was spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds on its measurements. But this was a really simple technique that we used. They had a campaign. We saw no evidence of it coming up in the Google autocomplete suggestions. We took that screenshot before the campaign started. So it was a sort of evidence of nothing in a way. And then the campaign happened, promotion happened, PR happened, people became aware of it, and then people started searching for that term. And so we took another screenshot 3 months later after the campaign had happened, and that term was now showing up in the Google autocomplete suggestions. And so it was a simple technique that took about 10 seconds. Take a screenshot before, take a screenshot after. Remember to name your screenshot on your computer, perhaps with the date that you took the screenshot, so at least you've got a reference point for when the screenshot was taken. But it was a really simple and effective slide that we could present to the CEO. And the CEO understands this evidence point too, because everybody Googles and sees things in this way. To say, before the campaign happened, no evidence of search, no one looking for it. Afterwards, here we are, it was the third placed Google autocomplete suggestion there. So that's just another of my affordable outcome related tips there that I think everybody can do on any budget. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a session about comms and comms measurement without mentioning AI. And this is a brilliant tool. It's called inthemix.ai. And it, again, you can put in the seed term and it will come back to you with the sources that Gemini, so it's focused specifically on Google Gemini. And this is the issue we're facing right now, I suppose, is that it's almost like we want one of these tools made for every of the LLMs that we might be working with. But this focuses on the sources that Google Gemini was using in its responses around a search that I did for air fryers, for example, because one of my clients is in the air fryer business. And some of your, of course, earned media is a big factor in what's being returned in AI responses at the moment. But it's important to understand which particular earned media sources are driving those responses. And of course, the AI responses will often cite the sources that they refer to. And what was fascinating by running the term air fryers through this tool was to find out, of course, yeah, okay, Google Housekeeping was a much cited source in the AI response. That's probably a bit of a no-brainer and may have been on our tier 1 media list in the first place. But actually, there was a blog there called The Spruce Eats that we would never have dreamed of targeting prior to that. And was leading to results being surfaced in a Gemini auto summary on Google. And similarly, there was some references to CNET, which perhaps may not have been on our tier 1 media list if we were trying to promote household goods. CNET might have been on our tier 1 media list if we were perhaps trying to do something more in the tech field. But it's just a fascinating way to help you gather guidance as to the earned media sources that may be influencing the AI responses that are coming back. And again, inthemix.ai is a free tool. I use it for my measurement reports because often in my reports we have to focus on, well, who are your key outlets that we're talking about your brand or your topic or your issue. And sometimes I need to make a linkage back between sort of that brand and some actionable insights as to how an organisation may wish to pitch to that media outlet in the future. So these kind of evidence points here that I refer to about, the sort of long-term impact that earned media can have, not just in the moment, but sometime after, a week or so later, a month or so later, years later even, can have in terms of impacting people's knowledge and consideration about your brand and your term. I'm mindful of the time, and we're getting close to the hour, but we're approaching the end of this session today. So this is the page that used to have Andrew Bruce Smith on it in the bottom left-hand corner. And I've replaced Andrew with my two old colleagues from Metrica, actually, Richard Bagnall, Paul Hender, who now run a consultancy called Comms Clarity. I just wanted to draw your attention to some of these other people who I listen to and follow in the industry, because they produce a lot of content around measurement. And again, these outlets, these podcasts, these people are free to connect with and free to listen to in many occasions. So again, I've probably mentioned Coverage Book a few too many times, but I am a big Coverage Book fangirl. And that's Stella Bales, top left-hand corner. She has a podcast called the PR Resolution Podcast. I've been fortunate to appear on it a few times, actually. It's all about measurement data, being curious about that kind of information. I would love it if you could subscribe to that podcast and listen to some of the back issues. Again, two great thinkers in our industry, Richard and Paul there, bottom left-hand corner. Go give them a follow on LinkedIn and listen to what they have to say. And then just, I know it's this picture of me on the right-hand side against a podcast from an agency based in the northwest of England here called Viva PR. Again, I've been fortunate to appear on their podcast a few times, and I'm actually working with them on a fractional basis to support Viva's PR's expansion of its measurement capabilities and skill set. But they did a post just a few weeks ago collating quite a lot of their measurement related podcasts together. So they've had people like Liam Kelly from Inclusive there. They've had Alex Waddington, who does some brilliant thing linking together data sources actually in the public domain and does a lot of work in the public sector. Myself, Sarah Waddington, of course, Stephen Waddington, all great speakers and thinkers on the topic of measurement and insights. I'm so conscious that it's like 5 to the hour, and I'm also conscious that I've got an OMAC board meeting that starts in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to stop there and see if any questions came out. And let's take a look. Let's see.
Yeah, so around 4 came in.
Brilliant. Okie doke. So let's have a look at the Q&A. Because I don't actually see the questions apart from, is the meeting being recorded?
It should come up in the more section. I can read them out to you if that's handier.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So do the free media monitoring services and AI services cover broadcast coverage at all?
No, it's unlikely that they would do. No, because a lot of these free tools are doing what's easiest. And I think I see there's a question there about paywalls and so on. No, some of those free and cheaper media monitoring tools they might surface results from a paywall title if it's mentioned in the headline or that first snippet. But if it's in the main body of the content that's also sitting behind a paywall, such as your PR Weeks, for example, it's unlikely that those kind of sources will be returned in the media monitoring results.
Okay.
Same with broadcast. Broadcast monitoring is a completely different beast. If you think about it, text-based media monitoring is about keywords in an article, and it's a yes/no thing. Broadcast monitoring has a whole different dimension, because first you have to have this kind of speech to text technology that turns the words into speech, that then allows the media monitoring tool to have that kind of yes/no function based on a set of keywords. So no, unfortunately, they are separate kind of services. They do need to be paid for.
We've just had a couple of questions on which I can answer. The session is being recorded and we'll double check, but I'm sure that we can share the slides. I'll link them with volunteer support after this. Can you see the question there, Steph?
Yeah, I've just found the Q&A tab whilst you're talking. Okay, so what is your advice on effectively measuring and evaluating social media channels beyond vanity metrics? Okay. So beyond the vanity metrics, again, social media channels, if you're if you're focusing on social media performance of your owned posts or earned posts, that's sort of two separate questions. I encourage organisations to do that same kind of qualitative analysis that they may do on their owned media coverage on their owned posts. You're not going to obviously assess your own post for sentiment, but things like an understanding if messages are conveyed in your own posts. It's a really useful exercise to encourage you to anchor your own output into the messages that you're intending to put out there. Often on a channel by channel basis, it makes sense, if possible, to have a consistent approach across all of those channels, because you want to have a holistic view of communications performance in the round. Of course, beyond the vanity metrics is about focusing on the engagement metrics. And if you've got the ability to narrow down even your likes versus your comments versus your shares, again, your likes figure is probably going to be higher than your comments and your shares figure, but there are different qualities of an engagement, and a comment, I think, has a greater currency than a like. Or a positive comment has a greater currency than a like, and a share has also a greater currency than a like, because somebody had to make a little bit more effort to go do that. And of course, they're helping to amplify the message and spread it to their own networks. Will the slides be available as well as the recording? I'm more than happy to share that with you, Kaz, so that you can share it with colleagues. I'll save it as a PDF and send it on to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Oh, hang on, fourth one. No, I think I've answered about paywalls.
Yep.
Brilliant. There we go. And here we are right on the hour. So you may wish to move on to your next meetings.
Lovely.
Also.
Thanks so much, Steph. Thank you.
Really appreciate you having me on today, and I hope your next session with Andrew and Ben is great. Thanks again, and remember, AMEC will be in Dublin in May, so if you're able to make it south of the border and learn more about measurement, we would love to welcome you there, and I personally would love to meet some of you if you listen to me today and you're able to make it to the AMEC Summit. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.